Hi again then guys, and welcome to the 7th installment of Heavy Hitters on Forza Horizon 3, the review series for essentially all things big, heavy, bulky and or off-roader. And this is pretty much the definition of an off-roader. It's a full-on buggy, one of the relatively few buggies to be featured currently on Horizon. And the problem with reviewing something like a buggy is it's such a unique vehicle within Forza that yeah, you can compare it to other cars, but at the same time it doesn't really seem totally fair to. So we are going to be comparing them to the trucks, the SUVs, the vans even of this series, but you should always take the scores in context. It is after all a buggy, it's not designed for instance for top end speed, and what's great for a buggy may not sound that great in comparison to a normal car. So as I said, just take that with a pinch of salt and view that as being the little spin that you should put on it. Now with that being said, what kind of scores am I going to give this car in comparison to much more typical trucks, SUVs, even rally raid cars? Well, first of all, of course, we have handling, as we always come to first, and straight off the bat I'm going to give this car a full 5, because this thing can easily outmaneuver pretty much any SUV or truck in the game. The handling is fantastic, and even though the car itself is very physically large, it's not heavy. It weighs less than 1 ton, which is literally less than half the weight, almost a third of the weight of many of the SUVs in the game. That's a huge advantage to have, and regardless of how much or how little power you give the car, it still handles really well. As far as acceleration goes, I'm going to drop it to a 3, and although 3 is certainly lower, that's not bad. That's middle of the road. Anything lower than a 3 is starting to get bad, anything higher is better and better. 3 is basically my default score. Any car really should get at least a 3 in every way. So with that being said, what I mean by that is the acceleration is good enough. It can keep up with some SUVs, of course in certain classes, and thankfully this car starts off as a B-class vehicle, which is pretty useful, but overall its range of effectiveness is limited. I think people expect that though. As far as top-end speed, unfortunately I'm going to have to drop the rating really low to a 1 out of 5. And as I said earlier, this is where the problem with comparing it to SUVs and trucks comes in, because it's so much slower. In stock form, it doesn't do much more than 100 miles per hour anyway under most actual racing circumstances, and that's an issue. It can easily be outrun by most of the SUVs with even lower levels of tuning, or sometimes even stock ones, so it's just not that kind of car. As far as value for money as well, I'm going to have to give it a 2, because for 100,000 credits, it has very niched racing use. As far as buggies go, I would say this is probably my favourite one in the game, but against anything other than buggies, its limited range is very readily apparent. And speaking of course of that limited range, that brings us to usability, but for usability I'm actually going to bump it up to a 3, because as long as you keep it in the lower classes of say B and A, it can take on, especially on twisty circuits, most of the other off-roaders in the game, not just buggies, but trucks, vans, SUVs as well. And so overall, as a tabulation of those 5 categories put together, I'm going to give the Alumi Class 10 race car a 56. But that's it overall for this pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.